So, good evening. I'm Shaun Bailey, the Member of Parliament for West Bromwich West, and tonight I have with me Andy Street, our fantastic Mayor of the West Midlands, who is up for election on May the 6th. So, this is a really great opportunity this evening for members of the public, for all of us to put our questions to Andy on some of the most important topics that we're facing at the moment. So, I'm sure this is going to be an absolutely fantastic opportunity. So just a few things before we begin. So we're planning to run for about an hour tonight with this, and we are recording our event this evening. So while obviously we're not live, obviously we will be using clips as we go. And any messages or any questions that you put through to Andy that we don't manage to get through this evening, obviously we will make sure that you get a response back. So, please do send through your email address to our fantastic moderators this evening, who will make sure that you do get that response. So anyway, enough of me, because we're here to hear from the man himself. So Andy, over to you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And Shaun, it's lovely to join you and join your residents tonight. Just a few words from me by way of introduction, because the real purpose is to get to the questions. The clue's in the title, Ask Andy. But, we've been doing these sessions usually in person, of course, right since before I was elected mayor. We've done some in the middle of West Brom, actually, across the whole patch. But I'm very determined to be available to citizens to ask whatever they want. And of course, the fun in the evening is I don't know what's going to be asked. So we're in your hands as to what you put in the chat. And my only commitment, I'll try to give you the most honest answer. If I don't know, I'll say. If it's someone else's responsibility, I'll probably say. But I'll still give you a view as to what people should be doing. And I'll try to act on exactly what I say. But very much looking forward to whatever your residents want to talk about, basically, Shaun.
Fantastic, Andy. That is great. So obviously, I think the first burning issue that we've had through, I know how passionate you are about it, was the infrastructure. Absolutely huge for the whole West Midlands, but particularly for obviously the three towns I represent in Wednesbury, Albury and Tipton. Andy, just reiterate, what's your vision for our area? I think many people will really want to know this. What's your vision for infrastructure for the Black Country, for the West Midlands, and how do we maximise on these great communities that we've got and get them interconnected and linked up?
Yeah, well, I'm a huge believer that really good infrastructure and connectivity is critical to the success of your community, Shaun. There's lots of stuff which says communities that are separated from really good public transport, they can't move to where the jobs are, perhaps where leisure activities are, they can become a bit, separated off, and that's not right. So it's part of a much bigger picture. And that's why I'll just give you the number for the whole of the West Midlands, then we'll come directly to West Brom West. Something I am really proud of is that the year before I became mayor, we spent £38 million on transport in the West Midlands infrastructure building. And this year, the year just finishes this weekend, and it's how I know the number accurately, that number will be £277 million. So we've gone up 7 times. And, each one of those projects has had to be the case be made, the funding won, and then get on with it. And we will be making a commitment. Your residents heard it first at our manifesto launch next Tuesday, that we will double that number again. So we will actually increase the total spending 14 times from what we had. And, when you think that we had just 38 million across a region of 3 million people, it actually tells you the story that we just were not spending enough. We weren't improving our transport, and we've now stepped decisively into it. And of course, the single biggest investment we've made anywhere goes right through the middle of your patch. So it's the metro extension from Wednesbury down indeed through some of your communities skirting Tipton, down through down towards Dudley Port, then into Dudley, and then on down to Bridal Hill. And I think there's going to be 4 new stops in your patch, Shaun, if I've read that correctly. And of course, the good news is that is now secured. It's happening. The diggers are in the ground, and we'll be opening that line. We hope 2023 for that actually to come to pass. And that will mean you can connect right through down to Dudley and Bridal Hill. And of course, that then connects up into the into the Wolverhampton and Birmingham line as well. And you heard it here first. We will be making a commitment to link from Wednesbury into Walsall as well, because that too is the old disused line. We've been doing the surveying. It's all overgrown, but it isn't actually built over. So the track route is still available for us to do further. So there we are. That's hopefully reassuring to your residents. So we can talk about digital connectivity if you'd like as well.
Well, absolutely. The digital connectivity element is actually massive too. I've had quite a few inquiries on that. So, Andy, actually, while you've done it, you've grasped it out of my hands, Andy, because it's almost if you read my mind. So go for it. I mean, in terms of digital connectivity for our communities, what's your priority there as well?
So something I'm actually very pleased with, and please, if someone, when I say what I'm going to, if someone says, well, that doesn't apply to me, I've got a problem, I can't even get any broadband link, then please, I'd like to hear about it genuinely, because the providers of the big new networks, whether it be Openreach from BT or whether it be City Fibre or whoever in your area, they're always saying, if there's a spot that hasn't got service, let's hear about it. Let's see what we can do. So that invitation is there. But the thing I was going to talk about is obviously us being the leader in this new 5G technology. So I know it might seem a bit sort of out there, but 2 years ago, we won the competition to be the lead, the national test for 5G. And actually the system's now live. And the good thing is that we are doing better than any region in getting what will be the backbone of communications in the future set up. 10% of addresses across the West Midlands now have them, and that is 3 times what it is in Manchester and twice what it is in London. So we are clearly leading, and there's a real commitment to get to about half of the addresses. And this will mean that you can download immediately, reliably. So particularly if you're running a small business, wanting to send your images or whatever, it will make a real difference. And specifically in the Black Country, we're now opening what we call a demonstrator for businesses in Wolverhampton to actually show people how they can use this new technology to help their business. So hopefully, Shaun, we really are at the cutting edge of that. But I know someone's going to say, but I can't even get Wi-Fi. So please, if you've got a particular problem like that, we'd be very pleased to hear about it.
Definitely. And Andy, just talking about that point more widely around business, and obviously, you've talked there through digital connectivity. Another question we've had is obviously, we're in unprecedented times at the moment with the pandemic, and obviously the economy, nationally and regionally has took a hit. What you've talked about it there, but can you just expand? What regional actions can we take on jobs and investment? I know you've talked a lot about this. We've had conversations about this, but can you just perhaps expand on sort of your strategy?
Yeah. With pleasure, and I think your people on the line be just interested in a wee bit of the context. So this is a huge issue. It's probably the single biggest issue now. So pre-pandemic, we were doing quite nicely as a region. I remember actually, I hope this little story will be of interest to people. I remember taking the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions to the job centre in the middle of West Brom the week before the lockdown, and the guy who runs the job centre there was a very upbeat guy. He was asked by the Secretary of State, well, how is it? And he said, hey, it's really robust, was his word, for the job situation in Sandwell. And I know there've been 12,000 additional jobs in Sandwell in just 2 years, remarkable. And there were 97,000 jobs across the whole of the West Midlands. Actually, I think it was 3 years, don't let me misquote, 12,000 in 3 years. 97,000 across the whole of the West Midlands. So we were doing really well, record employment. But actually what's happened in the pandemic is nearly all that progress has been lost. 95,000 more people claiming benefits across the West Midlands, and so many of them young people. So the overwhelming issue now is how are we going to get the region back to work? And I honestly think it's the biggest challenge for whoever is elected mayor. And my pitch very simply is, I've got a plan, I know what we're going to do about this. So the plan, I call it the mayoral jobs plan. It talks about 100,000 new jobs, 100,000 new jobs in just 2 years. We've never progressed at that pace before in this region, so it's very ambitious. And the really encouraging thing is it's not all about fantasy that if the government suddenly gave us a load of money, we could do it, or it's actually all about we can see things right now that we can actually do and get people back to work. And probably just in the interest of time, 3 quick buckets around that. First of all, the sectors that were already doing well pre-pandemic, they will bounce back. So particularly construction and what's been done to get people jobs, for example, in the HS2 delivery. We're talking about 7,000 jobs just in the West Midlands in building HS2. And my goodness, that's great that we can have that here. Secondly, of course, it's all about the new industries. And perhaps the best examples there are the sort of green manufacturing jobs. And we've actually talked about 7,000 jobs in the next 2 years in that. And again, that's funded because of our scheme. And then the other thing, of course, is retraining people for the jobs of the future. So they might have come out of retail, maybe out of hospitality, and some of our big retraining schemes, like for the digital industry, for healthcare, there's lots of jobs there at the moment. And those vacancies are now available alongside with the government's Kickstart vacancies, where we're looking for 20,000 in this region alone. So there's a really big detailed plan on how we're going to get 100,000 people back to work. And I think we'll put the link to that plan just in the chat if anyone wants to see the detail. But the critical point is you will see it's based on fact, not fantasy.
Fantastic, Andy. That is, you know, and as you say, I think we've seen that plan and it looks amazing. And the fact that we're already doing that, I think is great. And sticking on that theme, and another question we've had, you know, our high streets have really taken a hit during this pandemic. Now, you're by trade a retailer. That's what you did, you know, for 30 years. So thinking of, you know, in your experience as we come out of this, and I'm thinking particularly in the Black Country, in the high streets that are in my communities, what is the role of the mayor regionally to support our high streets, to support our retailers, and you as a retailer? I mean, what experiences and insight do you bring to support those businesses in the Black Country?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Shaun, you've got some cherished high streets, which I know are having tough times. I mean, you took me to Tipton just a few weeks ago, so I could see the challenge there. And of course, Great Bridge, another vibrant high street. And I'll come back to Great Bridge because I think there's something very important there. And actually in Albury itself, of course. So I know it's very, very, very important to your citizens, this. I think there's probably three things I can do. And the first, and you might say this isn't my responsibility, but it's certainly a role I have, is making sure government hear the voice of the region, what we need, and then take the steps that they've taken. And actually, I hope people would agree, Rishi Sunak has put a lot of money to help retailers. What he's done around VAT reductions, for example, for the hospitality sector on high streets, what he's done for business rate reductions for all non-essential retailers, extending that for another year, what he's done to prevent people being kicked out of their premises by giving an extension of that. Really important things that the government did. And I was there banging away pre-budget saying, this is what West Midlands retailers need. The second thing, of course, that has to be done is making sure that we put together the best bids for investment in our high streets. And the town's funds there for the Black Country were actually very successful. Now, I know the frustrating thing is it was West Bromwich Central rather than your immediate high streets, but very successful that we worked on those bids, in this case with Sandwell Council, in a very collaborative way, and good cash came in for things there. But then the other thing is we've got to think about the future of the high street and what I can do to help try to bring that about. And I think I come back to Great Bridge because not all high streets are the same. And actually really local high streets, I'm a huge believer they've still got an incredible role as the heart of their communities, actually. And I predict we will see people want to shop more locally as we come back from the pandemic, and more local retailers rather than the national chains having their outlets. That, I think, will be a huge success. Then we've got to make sure that, for example, vacant premises, we redevelop them maybe as housing, and the Combined Authority can help with funding for those. And of course, also, we've got to make sure the public transport is brilliant to bring people in. And we've also got to think about what other public services are on the high street to make the most of those, the concentration there. So what I'm really saying there is high streets will change, but they will still be the heart of our communities. And I genuinely think that working with government and with you, we can bring investment in to redevelop them in the ways we've talked about.
No, absolutely, Andy. And as you know, as I say, you've been to Tipton, obviously you've been to Great Bridge High Street as well, and you've seen there. And I think Great Bridge is an interesting example of what you were talking about there, because it's a vibrant high street still, many independent shops that just needs a bit of a chance. And I think we probably saw that on our sort of wanders around there, really. So, I think it's so exciting what you're talking about, and sticking with that theme of regeneration and development. Yep. Obviously, the other thing you've talked a lot about is a brownfield first strategy, okay. And I've had quite a few queries on this about what that means. So, can you just talk through perhaps what that means on the ground, a brownfield first strategy?
Yeah, with pleasure. So, the first thing is it means we've got to build homes, particularly for young people. Nobody's denying that. And the record over the last few years is really encouraging on that. So just to give you the numbers on the line, last 2 years, we built just short of 17,000 homes across the West Midlands, and that was double what it was just 5 or 6 years ago. So really important, new homes, particularly for young people. And we've also doubled within that the number of affordable homes. So that's very important for people as they set out on life. But the question is, where are those houses built? And my utter commitment is they must not be built on green belt. Now, you don't have a lot of that in West Bromwich West, or indeed on green spaces. The sort of parks, lungs that you do have must be protected, but instead they've got to come on brownfield sites. That's what brownfield first means. Develop those houses we need on the brownfield site. And a brownfield site might be a derelict place. And I'll give you a lovely example of that. We've just taken the old derelict works at Fountain Lane in Oldbury, which I think is just in your constituency, Shaun. Yeah. We've just agreed that those old works will be knocked down, will be redeveloped, and I think it's 234 homes coming on there with Lovells as the developer, and the combined authority has actually paid the cost of the cleaning up of the site, so then Lovells can go ahead with that development. And bluntly put, without our money, that scheme would not have gone ahead, because to be fair to them, they can't make it pay when they've got all that cleanup cost. So that's what we're doing, concentrating on derelict sites like that, or sites where they've just been left open. And again, this is not quite in your patch, but it's a very good example. Another part of Sandwell, Friar Park, that vast ex-sewage works from Severn Trent, and we will be redeveloping that. It stood idle, I think, for 30 years, right there, right next to the motorway, in the heart of the conurbation, 30 years idle. We will bring that back, and we're after 750 homes there. So every home that goes on an old industrial site or a place that's just laid idle, even though it looked green, it's not an amenity, it's all closed off. That's what brownfield first means, and it means we protect the green spaces that we do have. Hope that's clear.
That is great, Andy, and I think it, as I say, it shows that sort of ingenuity that we need when it comes to development. We've got those assets there, as you say, particularly in areas like our communities in West Bromwich West, which is predominantly built on, but we can still find those opportunities if we look. So that is absolutely amazing. Now, what we're going to do, Andy, this part, we're going to sort of ramp up the tempo a bit. So I've got some sort of quick fire questions here that have come through. And they're going to sort of jump around a bit, sort of topic areas, but it'll keep you on your toes. So,
as I say, I don't know what's going to happen, so fair enough. Right.
So, first one, I know this is a really important topic to you: homelessness. Now, obviously, we've got quite high. We've had high levels of homelessness in our area, and we know during the pandemic for you this has been a really important priority. So could you perhaps just talk through, as mayor, what you've been doing to tackle this, because it's an issue that I get correspondence on quite a lot, and I know you do as well. So just perhaps talk through what you've been doing locally to combat this, particularly during the pandemic.
Yeah, of course. So you're right, Shaun. 4 years ago, when we had the first election, every time I went to a meeting, this subject came up. And when people said homelessness, I think what they meant was the rough sleeping as the most visible sign of homelessness. And people said, that's just not right. So we were determined to do something about it. And we have made real progress. And just to give your callers the exact numbers, I hate the way that they talk about a count. It sounds so inhuman, but every year a count of people sleeping rough is done across the West Midlands, the same with everywhere else. And last November, our count was 44 people. Now, it's still 44 too many, but it had fallen enormously down. You said what happened in the pandemic? Down over 60% in 1 year. And over 2 years, it was down 3/4 from 169, the numbers etched on my mind, the peak we got to in November 2018. So we reduced the number by 3/4. How has that happened? It's happened through working together, but particularly about a new project that we call Housing First, where people who are sleeping rough have the opportunity to move into a home of their own. Now, before anyone gets me wrong, it's not a vast home. It's probably a room in a shared accommodation, a small flat, but it's a door you close behind you at the end of the day, and you say, this is mine, and I can rebuild my life from here. And the brilliant thing is that we're leading this as a pilot for the country. and we've so far got over 370 people into their new accommodation and new start. So the numbers are clear, 370 in their new accommodation, just 44 rough sleepers left on the street. So we have made genuinely a difference. And I honestly don't think that difference would have happened if I hadn't been banging on the door of government to say, give us the money for this new fund. And to be fair, the then Secretary of State, Sajid Javid, said, okay, Andy, you pilot this for us, you show what you can do. And I hope people would say that we have shown what we can do.
Absolutely. And I think you raise a really interesting point, Andy, actually, because certainly from when we've spoken, you've talked a lot as well about a joined up approach on this, because to tackle rough sleeping and to tackle homelessness, it's yes, the one element obviously is about, ensuring that person has that place to stay, but actually it's also ensuring they've got meaningful employment, getting the skills gap to ensure they can become self-sufficient as well. And I think you've done quite a lot in that area, obviously on that jobs and skills piece too. And helping the sort of those vulnerable adults in particular to ensure that we break that cycle of homelessness.
Well, what's interesting about the Housing First scheme, just to your point, Shaun, is it doesn't just put you into accommodation, it actually gives you a support worker to address the underlying issues that you may have. So whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's an addiction issue, which can sometimes come with rough sleeping, the support worker will help you through that. And people on this project who I've talked to, the ex-rough sleepers will say, I had a really tough moment. I didn't know if I was going to stick with it, but I rang my worker or whatever time of day or night, and they saw me through it. So the brilliant thing is the overwhelming majority of people who've gone onto this project are still on it, and some of them, to your point, are now just emerging to beginning to get their first opportunities for work. So it's very reassuring, actually. But that support is just as much a part of it as being just put in a room on your own, where you don't possibly. On your own, no one has the strength of character to sort everything out on their own. You need support around you.
Absolutely. And as I say, it's been absolutely fantastic to see that. And I think certainly from the feedback I've had, it's just been absolutely great. If we just turn now, so a question I've had is around again the jobs during the pandemic, but particularly around more mature people. So the question here really is: lots of mature people have lost their jobs due to the pandemic. What help is available to help get them back into work and give them those skills that they may not have or may be lacking?
This is actually a difficult question. It's a very relevant question, I know. What the data says is that, and we all know this, it's been young people who've been most hard affected by the pandemic. Because if you think of some of the sectors that have been worst affected, hospitality, a lot of young people working there. But there are also, just as the questioner asks, a lot of more mature people. And for them, it can be more difficult, actually, to get back into work. So what I would refer anyone to is our retraining schemes. And I know it's easy to say retraining if you've had a career in one thing, just to go and do something new. That's hard to do. But we've had some brilliant success stories where people, for example, have gone through our digital boot camps, where if you've been, we always feature a woman who's had a good few years, not quite as many as me in retail, but a good few years, and that finished, and she got retrained in basic digital skills, coding, what have you, and has now moved into that and is actually thriving. And there are lots of similar examples. So the simple point is, all of the training programs that there are run by the Combined Authority, whether they be under our education budget, a national retraining budget, or indeed some of the, we call the very unsexy title, the sector-based work academies at our colleges. We should have had a marketing degree to work on that. But it's exactly, what it sounds like. You take a sector, healthcare, where of course there are new growing jobs, and we put on programs with our colleges to give people the necessary skills to move into there, with a commitment of a job interview at the end. All of those are available through the sort of prospectus that the colleges do, or the West Midlands Combined Authority Sector-Based Work Academy. We can again perhaps put the link to that for the person as well in the chat. But all of that is designed to get people the skills and to move into a sector that's growing rather than contracting.
No, that is absolutely amazing. That is fantastic, Andy. So I said we're going to jump around a little bit. So the next one's more about the vaccination program. So as we know, I think we can all agree it's been an absolute success. And I was actually at Tipton Sports Academy a few weeks ago and just saw how amazing the rollout has been. And I'm sure across the West Midlands, it's been absolutely amazing. But I suppose for anyone that might be hesitant of taking the vaccine, what would you say to them, Andy? You know, as our mayor, what would your advice be to anyone that might be umming and ahhing about whether to get the vaccine or not?
Yeah, great question. And I've had to do quite a bit of this as the sort of regional, I hope this is an inappropriate word to use, regional leader. I've had to get out there on telly and say my bit. And I would say two things, one to you personally, and then one to you in terms of member of wider society. And the personal thing I would say is it is utterly safe. Please tell us what your concern is, and let's work through whether that concern really is valid. It's okay to be concerned, but it's sort of not okay to check it out. And whatever language you might speak as your first language, all the advice is there from the NHS online, or you can ring up your GP. They will go through it at great length to allay your concerns. So if you haven't yet had the vaccine and you're in the over 50 group, speak up, make the call, go online, check it out, allay your concerns personally. The second thing I would say is to you as a member of society that actually, quite unusually, this is genuinely a case where everybody has to do the right thing. And anyone who personally chooses to opt out, I respect their decision to do that, but remember the implication upon others. It's frankly your own choice what you do with your health, but it's not your choice then to possibly inadvertently pass on the virus to others. So I genuinely would say, think about your responsibility as a citizen to others, because this is perhaps a unique situation where we are genuinely all in it together, and we all need to look after one another and think about our responsibilities to one another.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more, Andy. And as I say again, I think across the West Midlands, I'm sure we'll agree, it's just been phenomenal the work we've seen on this programme. Yeah,
it's been brilliant actually, and I'm very proud of everyone who's done it. In fact, I haven't been to a vaccination centre in your patch, Shaun. I went to the one at the Black Country Living Museum to saw the mass vax there. Yeah. That was, I mean, it's just incredible, the organisation, the dedication, some obviously from NHS people, some from lots of volunteers who stepped forward though, and it's been brilliant to see actually. Yeah,
absolutely, quite emotional at times as well, in fairness, just to sort of see how many people are coming in and how grateful people are, and how that light at the end of the tunnel after how hard this has been.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so that is absolutely great. So next question, we're coming back to infrastructure and transport, and it's actually about Great Bridge Island. So I don't live too far from Great Bridge Island. My office is just down the road, and it's
yes,
with the Lions, and it gets quite congested. And can be very, very dangerous at times, and we've seen so many near misses. So I'm just wondering, obviously infrastructure, transport, huge part of your vision for the area. For areas like Great Bridge Island, what's your vision? How do we make these roads safer? How do we invest in them? What sort of is the strategy to ensure that commuters can commute safely and use these roads?
So I told you I would say if I didn't know everything about it. So this is the first time I have to admit I don't know the detail of what's proposed for this island. I do know your MP has been vociferous in his 18 months as an MP lobbying around this, though, so full marks to Shaun. But let me just talk about a few general points. First of all, obviously, I'm a great believer in public transport, but I absolutely understand that some journeys have to be made by car, and therefore we've got to make our road system work. And two really big investments I'm really pleased that we've been able to bring in, one north of you and one south of you. Of course, the south is the Birchley Island. I always call it the gateway to the Black Country, gateway to your patch, really. And the fact that we got 24 million for government to upgrade that is, and how many years have been waiting for that? That's
30 years, I think we've been waiting for that investment.
30 years, that's come. And of course, the other one, and your residents will have been, yes, this is also right, thinking about the way they would drive. They will also have been sitting in jams here, junction 10 of the M6, although I know junction 9 feeds right into your patch a little bit more, but we've also now got, I think it's £70 million being spent on that upgrade, and that's really important as well, particularly for freight, interestingly, in business, very important for business, and getting goods that have been made out. So I absolutely get the import. So if we've got a particular problem there and there is a scheme that needs to be developed, I'm more than happy that maybe Shaun with Sandwell Council would develop that up, and we look to see what we do. And of course, what we would do, two very important things: any redevelopment of any road scheme, we're looking to improve cycling facilities there, because of course it's terrifying for cyclists at the moment, Great Bridge Roundabout, and of course for pedestrians as well, because we do want through all of this to be encouraging more cycling as well. So yeah, I suppose the simple answer would be, let's hear the proposal, let's see it. And those perhaps two other examples of where we've taken really long awaited schemes and got them done.
Amazing. And actually, you're leading into my next question quite well there, Andy. We promise we as I say, these are not scripted. We promise. It's perfect timing there.
No, as I keep saying, I haven't got a clue what you're going to say. All ears.
So the next one is about climate change, which I know again is really top of your agenda. So what work have you been doing, and what is your ambition to encourage more people to use buses and other cleaner forms of transport? So I know this is a really big thing for you. It's great to hear your vision.
And it's fascinating. Whoever asks these questions, when we had the mayoral election 4 years ago, yes, this conversation was there, but it's really come of age in the last couple of years. It's fascinating how it is. And of course, we all want to build back better, as the phrase from Boris goes, and that means building back greener, cleaner, da da da. So this is absolutely critical now. The big picture: the West Midlands declared a climate emergency in the summer of 2019. Then we set ourselves a carbon neutrality target of 2041. And that wasn't just me picking a number out of the air, but it's scientifically tested. As some have said in the last year, we followed the data. And we've got that now. But most importantly, we've actually got a detailed plan as to what we're going to do in the first 5 years. So we haven't done what lots of politicians do, just give a soundbite. We have got 120 pages of detailed plan of what we're going to do. And coming directly to the question of the emissions, about a third of transport, a third of business, and a third of homes. So let's go to the transport bit, as that's what you've asked about. So as I said earlier on, we've got over £1 billion of capital now fired at cleaning up, giving better public transport to get people out of their cars and making sure our transport is green. So let's just go through some of the things that are happening within that. Obviously, the metro extension we've talked about, we won't go over all that again. Obviously, we've got railway lines reopening. So that obviously gives people critical alternatives to car, reversing the beaching lines. We've got that in Walsall, Wolverhampton, and South Birmingham. But then buses. Now, buses are absolutely crucial. The wonderful thing, because they're the backbone of public transport, the wonderful thing is the West Midlands is bucking what is happening nationally. Pre-pandemic, obviously, this stat, we were increasing bus ridership, and we had 8 million more bus journeys than the previous year and the year before the pandemic. Think how much carbon that saves if the alternative was car. And the way we have done that is we've got this virtuous circle established of holding fares level for 4 years now. Bus fares haven't gone up in my time as mayor. Don't think anyone else around the country can say that. Held them level. And of course, in Sandwell, we've had the low fare zone. So for a lot of people, they've actually come down rather than just held level. We've extended half price travel to apprentices and trainees as well. So for that group, it's been there. So on the basis of lower fares, more people have ridden it. So actually the operator National Express has invested in new vehicles. And we've seen, I hope you would say, we regularly see clean buses now. If you think of the 82, 87 along the Dudley Road out to you, finishing in Oldbury, then Oldbury, then on to Dudley, then, you know, that is probably the cleanest bus anywhere in the country. And it's brilliant we've had that investment, and we've given an absolute commitment that even our old buses will have converters fitted all by the end of this year. So there'll be no polluting bus in the West Midlands by the end of this year, the only area outside London to have given that commitment. And then going forward, we've got electric buses being trialled, not yet in Sandwell, but certainly Birmingham, Solihull, Coventry. We've won the competition for the all-electric city, as we call it, for Coventry. We did bid for Sandwell, but government chose Coventry. I can't understand why. But now we've got the opportunity to bid for hydrogen buses. and we will be looking to see where we put that in, hopefully for Birmingham and the routes between Birmingham and the Black Country. So, I hope people feel on buses we've actually turned a real corner. And you might think I'm passionate about it, because I am, because it's what people rely on day to day. And the fact our fares have been level for people not on high incomes, that really makes a difference.
Now that is I totally agree with you, Andy. We've recently had an issue in Tividale, actually, which has been highlighted by a fantastic local campaigner, Emma Henlon, around access to buses, and particularly bus stops, which people might think is so broken, but it's such an important issue. And we had the movement of a bus stop from Wheatsheaf Road to Darby's Hill in Tividale, and the movement, just by a little bit, cut off so many people. And Emma, who's standing for council in Tividale, has done an amazing job campaigning on this. But I think you agree with me that we've got to ensure that it's great that we've got this investment, but it's making sure we can get people accessing that as well, because that's also a key part of it, I'm sure.
I totally agree. So other form of access, of course, access for disabled people. So all the new fleet is much better in that respect, the announcements, everything. And of course, we want people to walk and cycle more as well. So the Towns Funds bid in Sandwell all had good cycle provision in them. And you will be getting the West Midlands cycle hire, the bikes across the borough very, very shortly. I can't remember the rollout date for Sandwell. Every borough is before July, so it's imminent. And of course, we've already got them in Sutton, Wolverhampton, launched in Coventry this week, but they're coming everywhere in the next few weeks. So that is a lovely facility. We talk about Boris and his bikes in London. We've now got the same here in the West Midlands.
Amazing. It's absolutely fantastic. It really, really is. And as I say, just shows that progress that we're making. And
just let me interrupt you, Shaun.
Yeah, of course.
Really important. I don't think any council, frankly, Sandwell Council would have been able to do that on its own.
No.
You need to have the scale of the 7 working together to make it interesting for the private company to provide them. And I think in a sense, it almost proves the model that we never had anything like that before. And then suddenly, by working together, we can bring these things about.
Well, it's that running theme, isn't it, of partnership working, isn't it? I think that's been the running theme of what we've talked about so far, is building those partnerships and using them to, as I say, to collaborate to achieve even more than you can in silo, really.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
So that is absolutely amazing. So keeping with the theme of jumping around, the next thing is, you've touched on it a little, you've touched on it with your brownfield first thing, but I want to drill in a bit more into derelict buildings. So we know across the West Midlands, particularly in the Black Country as well, we've got quite a number of derelict buildings. So I'm just keen, we talked obviously about the role at the heart of redevelopment, but more broadly, in terms of tackling this, what is your wider vision of getting these buildings back into use? Because I think that's certainly, from what the questioners ask, and certainly from what I hear as well, getting these buildings back into some use is also important. So I'd be interested to understand, how you see that rolling out.
So there's derelict buildings and there's derelict buildings. So some, frankly, just need to be knocked down. I'll give you an example right from the centre of West Bromwich that your person may know very well, the Bull Street car park. What a monstrosity.
Really?
And we've knocked it down. And that was combined authority funding. And then now it's down. It's fascinating because we're now getting developers coming in saying, yeah, we'd like to redevelop that space in the middle of West Bromwich town centre for your residents. So some have to come down. And this is not in your patch, but I think it's a lovely example because so many people saw it. The wonderful Cavendish House, the derelict office block on the hill as you drove through Dudley. Yeah. And it just stood there like something in East Berlin, frankly. And what an advert for one of our towns. And it had to go. And again, the combined authority sorted that out after 20 years of it sitting there and no one getting anything done. So some have to go. And of course, we talked earlier on about Fountains Lane. Now, others, though, can be repurposed and brought back to life and converted particularly for, well, there's all sorts of ideas. Some I want converted for homes, but obviously it has to be appropriate. And I'm very suspicious sometimes of people who want to convert office blocks for inappropriate homes. But there are some that can be converted. An idea that we haven't got as many examples as I want yet, is for places to be converted for like incubator hubs for businesses to start up with. And I say this as an example and hope you might think, oh, we could do this in my patch as well. We've got a brilliant example in Erdington in Birmingham, where the old swimming baths, which has been closed, the council built a brand new leisure centre, but they left the old one there as a derelict building. And you just scratch your head thinking, what's going on here? So we're actually working with a community group to convert that into an incubator hub place for startups. Now, that might give an idea for some in your area. So there are housing, incubator spaces. Some, though, if you're thinking about a heritage building, I think we've got to actually work harder to bring some of those back to restoring them as their heritage use. And the one I would love to see more progress on, I think this is in the Worley constituency, actually, is the Chance Glassworks.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's just in the, because I mean, that has got such an industrial heritage. But another one that I think actually a fascinating example, West Bromwich Town Hall. The fact that in the town's bid, the government are going to give the money for refurbishing that and bringing it back to use as a venue, a performing arts venue, brilliant. So I think what comes out of it, Shaun, is there's so many different answers, from knocking it down to restoring it as a wonderful performance art venue, and we need to think about it. But we've got to be I guess my mantra is, you've got to be restless over this. Each one of them needs a specific proposal, and I'm ready and willing, and I hope I've got the record now to work on them as they come through.
That's amazing. And if we just stick to that thing, because we have a question on this as well. SMEs. So particularly in my patch, we've got so many small, medium-sized businesses who have kept going during the pandemic, and frustratingly at times, they've felt a little bit overlooked. So I know you're passionate about this, but your strategy for SMEs, putting them back at the heart of the recovery, for you, what does that entail? And, in terms of linking in with that support, you've talked there obviously about the incubator hubs, but more broadly, that idea of ingenuity and drive and development, what does that look like for you? How do we use these businesses to start that fifth industrial revolution in the Black Country?
Yeah. And I think it's actually a huge opportunity for the Black Country, that its business base is so dominated by SMEs. It's a strength, and we've got most of it. So the first thing that I have tried to do and can do more of is make sure SMEs get a greater share of the big contracts that are on offer. We talked about HS2 as actually the biggest civils contract in Europe. Yeah. There are lots of businesses in the Black Country that could be supplying it. So, actions, not words. We held the workshop, whatever you might want to call it, virtual workshop, with the big contractors, first tier contractors for HS2, with local SMEs. 750 came on the line to learn about their opportunity to bid for those contracts. And I give the same commitment for the other big contracts that we have, whether it be Commonwealth Games, whether it be building some of our transport infrastructure that we've talked about. We're determined that our SMEs get the very best share. And we'll repeat that HS2 workshop very shortly, because it's where there's definite big money there. So that's the first thing. The second thing, though, is this whole question about business advice and support. And I would urge anyone to go to their growth hub. Black Country Growth Hub is brilliant, and it's the sort of one-stop shop. And if you want to talk about what you might want to do to grow your export piece, there's advice there. And we did a whole sort of singular guidance for Brexit across the West Midlands that we put together. Or it might be, how do you want to invest in capital, and what capital allowance grants are there for you? So all that advice is in one place at the Growth Hub. And what we're also, of course, very, very hungry to see is what the government are going to do over this piece that they called what did they call it? The new management training programs for SME leaders, which I will fully admit, I've wanted to get off the ground here. We've failed, but I was delighted when I heard Rishi Sunak stand up and say they were going to do it. So we want to stand ready to make sure we deliver those here as well. So all sorts of ways, actually, that there's both help getting contracts and then growing SME business. And the other thing we can do, of course, is make sure you get the the skilled people, and particularly SMEs in the digital sector still say to me, there aren't the qualified people we need. So that's the other thing we can step into.
And that is amazing. And again, it's really timely, because we've got some questions flowing in now, and you touched there on obviously probably the biggest event we're going to see upcoming, of course, the Commonwealth Games
Okay.
and the skills piece there. So really simple question that we've been asked. For you, what do you see the legacy of the Commonwealth Games being, particularly for areas, say, like Tipton, for example, that, you know, maybe had a bit of a raw time in the past? What do you see that legacy being for some of our communities?
Oh, all sorts of things. But if you made me choose one word, it would be pride. Now, the Black Country is full of pride, but some areas, as you say, have had a bit of a knock. I accept that fully, and the pandemic's been harsh. But there can be pride in the Commonwealth Games. So let me just explain, because there's a number of opportunities. Obviously, we've worked hard to make sure the events are spread well beyond Birmingham. So the fact that this wonderful new swimming pool is going to be, it's in the south part of Sandwell, but it's there, it's in Sandwell. Brilliant. There are sporting events from Cannock through to Leamington, road racing in Wolverhampton, as we said, swimming. It's brilliant, the array of things. So there'll be pride in that, but there's much more. The first thing to talk about is obviously the jobs that will come through this. There's 40,000 jobs likely in the Commonwealth Games bid. And when I look back now, we bid for it in 2017. We thought it was important then, but my goodness, it's important now. Now, I know lots of them will be temporary and they'll pass by. But what we're trying to do is make sure people get the skills so that some of those jobs live beyond the Commonwealth Games. And already the Combined Authority, through our Jobs and Skills Academy, is offering training programs for things that are relevant to the Commonwealth Games. So whether it be event management, sport, coaching, advanced hospitality, all those things are going to be there. And again, that's available right now for citizens across the Combined Authority. So whether you live in Tipton or Coventry, that facility is there already. The other really exciting thing is the business opportunity, not just building the things, and there's £1 billion of contracts. Where else do we get £1 billion from public money poured into the West Midlands? But what we're also going to do is have an international business promotion thing on the back of the Commonwealth Games. And I'm particularly proud of this because we bid for this funding separately from the Chancellor last year. He gave it to us, and we're about to launch this. It's not public knowledge yet, so I probably shouldn't say it. You never know, somebody with flowing blonde hair may come and launch it here, and we're calling it the Trade and Investment Programme. And it will be called probably the Road to Birmingham, and we're going to start with the Dubai World Expo this year. So we'll be taking West Midlands businesses to represent Britain, and that should be businesses, brilliant businesses in your patch, just as it is in Perry Barr. So there will be definitely a business upside from it as well. And then lastly, obviously, I hope lots of local citizens will actually participate. So we've got to think about volunteering opportunities, ticket pricing, that'll all be coming fairly shortly to make sure locals can take advantage of that. And then, of course, hopefully encouraging grassroots sports as well. So, you know, lots really to be proud of with it. So pride, that's my word.
Absolutely. And just to, if I can just tag onto that and say, please get involved. It'd be my plea, please get involved. It's such a fantastic thing for our region, Andy, as you've said. And I think if you know, all local residents just get involved, it's just going to be so amazing. I think, Andy, you'd agree with that.
I would definitely.
Absolutely fantastic. So keeping with the theme of sort of jumping around a little bit, green spaces. So we've talked about this a little bit, but I think it's become even more prevalent, particularly during lockdown, and the beneficial impact for mental health.
Yes.
So in terms of, you touched on it in your brownfield first strategy, but green spaces in urban areas. So I can think, for example, in my patch, we've obviously got sheep wash. We've got the sheep wash. We've also got areas like Tibberdale Park. What do we do? And what is your role, do you think, in encouraging and sort of allowing these areas to flourish, you know, and to ensure that particularly the benefits that we've seen during lockdown, we can continue to build upon those?
Yeah. So, you know, I'm not dodging it, but a lot does rest with the local council here, of course. But I can do two things. Number one, make sure they're protected, of course. Not that there's particular threats to the two that you mentioned there, but there are elsewhere in the conurbation. You'd be quite surprised that there's talk of councils taking their green spaces, but I think you're okay on that, actually. But what we must do is think about more. So we've got in our sort of, it's planning guidance, it's not formal instructional policy. We've talked about incorporating green spaces in new developments. And And it can be done in a very sustainable way. And it was lovely. Just a few weeks ago, I was down in Coventry, where we were actually planting what we call a pocket park in a new housing development that the CA has funded. And it's a lovely example of, yes, we've got to have development, we've got to have homes, but it's got a green ribbon down the middle of it. So that type of idea is so important. And I hope what we're going to do in Albury at Fountain Lane, we'll have that type of idea with Lovells. They've done a scheme which is actually much bit further on than the Albury one, up in Walsall, and similar disused works. And there they've incorporated some lovely green space along the canal side that there is there. So all of our big schemes, we're really trying to make sure that we're bringing that green lung into them. And just to put money where our mouth is, if you've got a community organisation on the line, asking about this, we've just launched what we call in our environment plan, our community green grants. They're not huge, but they are designed to help communities re-green some of their local areas. Again, all the details on the WMCA website. It's competition, but we will want to make sure that we get applications across the patch. So, you know, there's things we can definitely do to influence that.
Absolutely. And again, it comes back to that point, doesn't it? It's you've talked about it so many times this evening, working together, partnerships, the community groups with councils, you know, that's how we're going to do this. And I think you've already shown that that's your focus, is to bring all those different groups together to achieve this.
It is my view that that's the job of the mayor, not to be particularly partisan, but to be that sort of uniting force, work for all citizens across the region.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I wanted to take a sort of a bit of a look at something else now. Now, I know it's not quite in your remit, but it's still really important, and that is about crime and safety, and particularly police stations. Obviously, we know our good friend Jason Sohal, who's running to be police and crime commissioner, has done a lot of work on protecting our police stations from closure. And as you're probably aware, as I've banged on about you about it quite a bit, Tipton Police Station is under threat now. What I sort of would be keen to understand from your perspective, Andy, is what is your view on the importance, you know, the importance of local policing and how it impacts communities? And when obviously we're talking about, you know, rebuilding, we're putting community at the heart of that. So what do you think that interlink is there, and how important do you think that community police stations and community policing is to the prosperity of our area?
Yeah, no, it's a very important question, Shaun. And let's just be really clear about the first bit of the answer. I stand absolutely shoulder to shoulder, you probably say, with you and Jay in the commitment to keep Tipton Police Station open. And I said I wasn't very partisan, but I will be now, because the truth is that the Labour Police and Crime Commissioners, we've had 2 of them over 9 years, and they have closed 44 police stations across the West Midlands. I mean, it's an incredible number. And there are others like Tipton now under threat. So we have to draw a line in the sand and say no more. And to be very blunt, we need a Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner who will do that. So there we are, support Jay. But the question is really about why do you think that? And it's very straightforward. I'm a huge believer that policing must start in our communities. The whole sort of theory of British policing going back hundreds of years is you have the consent of the community to impose the community's collective wish through the law. And therefore you must be rooted, your policing must be rooted in those communities. It must be visible, must be part of, must be gathering intelligence that sometimes can actually add up to something far, far more serious than you might first think. So I'm very clear, our police have got to be in the communities. And of course, just at the moment, the West Midlands Police is recruiting more police on the back of the funding that government has put in, and you should be seeing that improvement in policing on the front line. Very clear.
Absolutely, Andy. And you know, I think people have recognised the investment that's gone in nationally to our policing and the extra police numbers. And I think, you know, you and I have probably both heard the feedback on that. And you're right. You know, it ultimately we build cohesive communities by keeping them safe as well. That's what we do. And it's going to be so vital to our recovery. So, no, absolutely agree with you. Andy, I'm conscious that, you know, time is pressing, and there've been still quite a few questions to go through. But
really? Oh gosh, right, okay.
But there's a really important one that you're probably asked a lot, but it's come through. Now, obviously, you, as we talked about, you're a retailer and you had a really successful career at John Lewis. Obviously, the main question is what made you decide to make that jump to take that risk and to put yourself forward to be Mayor of the West Midlands? I'm sure you've answered this loads of times, but people that are listening still really keen to hear from you. What was your story that got you here?
Well, of course, my story, if I'm allowed to say this in a call in West Bromwich, is I am a Brummie. And
I'll let you off.
Okay, all right. But I'm learning. So my whole family was from this city and region, so it's deeply in my blood. The truthful answer, Shaun, is there was two things that led to my decision. The first, and this was very much the second issue, but it's worth saying, I've been MD of John Lewis for 10 years. That's a long time to be leading a company. And I genuinely thought it was probably time to move on. I genuinely thought someone else would probably do it better, if I'm honest. New ideas, fresh approach. And so I was just beginning to think, let's see. Of course, some would say, given what's happened to John Lewis since, that I was very lucky. I chose the right moment to leave, and who knows. But anyway, but by far the bigger reason was very straightforward. I just believed that this place could do better. I genuinely thought that the combined authority, the mayoralty, working in this sort of collaborative way would improve the region. Genuinely could. And I rather immodestly thought, Andy, you can do that job. You've learned lots in your career in business that's directly relevant to how you would do that job. And so I thought, I'm not having someone else do it. And I definitely didn't want a long-standing Labour career politician to do it, because Labour's led this region for all of the 40 years before. Even though the post didn't exist, they were dominant in local politics. As I say, they were the Police and Crime Commissioner, and I just don't think they delivered. So I thought, I'm going to give it a go. And remember the numbers. When I did chuck in my job in John Lewis and stand, no one gave me any chance. We just lost an election across the region by 120,000 votes. And I said, never mind that, I'm going to give it a go. And we, in the end, won by just 4,000 in 2 million. So it was incredibly close. But to this day, whatever happens, I shall be eternally grateful to the people who voted for me. And I've genuinely enjoyed it. And I hope I have served people of the West Midlands with honour, actually, and principles and values, because that's what matters more than anything else.
Absolutely. I'm probably a bit biased, but I would definitely agree. You certainly have. You've been fantastic. And and just to highlight as well how close it was, absolutely. And I think you'd agree, Andy, it's so vital that everyone gets out and exercises that right to vote. I think it is, the power we have, particularly when it is so tight, the importance that a single person's vote is absolutely vital.
Correct. Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
I'm conscious that we're nearly at time, but there's one more question that we've had through that I think is a really good one. Andy, can you give your 90-second pitch as to why you should carry on as Mayor of the West Midlands? I appreciate you've done nearly an hour, but in the final 90 seconds, can you give us a summary of why you feel that you should carry on as Mayor of the West Midlands?
I'll try. I think I should carry on because I'm someone who says what I'm going to do and then does it. So I actually deliver. And the evidence of that was very clear from the first 4-year term. I said I'd get our transport system sorted out, not completed, but well on its way. I said I'd build the homes that we need in the right place, done. I said we would improve the skill level of our population. I haven't talked that much about that tonight, but that's done. And I also think I've represented the region in a collaborative, non-partisan way, speaking up for us whenever it is necessary, and critically being able to do deals with central government. You don't need a mayor who just talks and criticises. You need a mayor who understands how to do business with government for the benefit of this region. So a Conservative mayor, Conservative MP, a Conservative government, that's the way we will make progress, by getting stuff to happen.
Absolutely. I can't add any more to that, because absolutely right, Andy, 100%. And I think you've shown that, and I think we've seen that, over the last 18 months as well, moreover in particular, but over your 4 years too. And we will fight to make sure that continues. Absolutely. And I think certainly people in Wednesbury, Albury and Tipton are noticing it as well. So again, from them, thank you so much for everything you've been doing over the last 4 years, because it is noticed and it is appreciated. Andy, that's brought us to time. We've done our hour as I promised, and it's flown, in fairness, but thank you so much for that insight. I think it's been really insightful to hear your priorities for our area, and I think we've certainly covered a broad range of topics there, but now it's been absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Shaun, for hosting and for bringing us all together. And most importantly, thank you to your residents for joining us tonight. And I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too. But an hour of politics is more than enough. So I wish everybody good night. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye.